Research conducted by the Road Traffic Management Corporation and the South African Medical Research Council with the University of South Africa shows that driving under the influence of alcohol accounted for 27.1% of fatal crashes in the country. South Africa's move to lockdown level 2 saw the ban on alcohol sales lifted. This included the purchasing for off-site consumption, as well as at restaurants, bars and taverns. Are we likely to see drunk driving related accidents under this new lockdown level? Now, joining us to talk more about this is Automobile Association spokesperson Layton Beard. Layton, thank you for your time and thank you for joining us on Weekend Dawn. Always a pleasure chatting to you. Now, for me, my question is it a situation of drivers not worrying about the implications of drinking and driving? Because despite the warnings, despite the campaigns, it's still accounting for a lot of fatalities. 27.1% is quite a lot.
Yeah, I have actually not seen that report that you're referring to, Jacob. And, based on data that we have from previous years, I would venture a guess to say that of that 27%, a large portion of that would be intoxicated pedestrians who were involved in crashes and who died as a result of those crashes. So just to give that context, and again, I need to point out I haven't seen the report. I'm just speculating based on the historical data that I know. Obviously, your question is very pointed. Why do people still drink and drive when we have all of these campaigns, when we know that there's going to be severe consequences? And the fact of the matter is people actually don't care. I think that's one part of it. And the other part of it is they don't care because there is a feeling of impunity. That you're not going to get stopped, you're not going to get caught, and even if you are able to get out of that situation. So I think there's a lot more than people just feeling, well, you know what, I don't really care. I think that there's a law enforcement aspect of it that comes into play as well.
So this is something that needs to go as far as the government then, especially when it comes to law enforcement. What will bring about this change where people will change their mindset and think differently after having even a sip of alcohol?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Our message as the AA is not don't drink and drive. Our message is drink or drive. And we hear all kinds of things about, the fact that there's going to be zero tolerance for drunk drivers. And we think that that's fantastic. But our question is if you're going to say we're going to start with a zero tolerance approach today, our question would be, well, how's that going to be different to what we've done in the past? And what is going to change overnight that is going to make this the zero tolerance approach meaningful? And it comes down to law enforcement. Obviously, you need to make sure that your law enforcement agencies, your traffic law enforcers, are properly equipped to deal with drunk driving. And by properly equipped, they've got the necessary equipment. And very critically, there are enough resources to deal with this issue. We have seen through the National Traffic Review that was released in 2019, there was a call for more traffic officers on the road. There was a call for traffic officers to have better equipment, for better training. And therein, I think, lies part of the solution. And at the moment, we know that unless that happens, you can say that we have a zero tolerance policy, but if it's not implemented, then people are going to continue to drink and drive as they have always done, and they're going to take their chances and they're going to risk it, and people are going to die. And I think that's the reality of where we are at the moment.
Layton, in your opinion, how should this be communicated? The dangers of drunken driving, that is. Should we change the methodology and the way that we're communicating drinking and driving through different and various campaigns and channels of exposure?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and I think what you're talking about as well is obviously shocking, people, and showing shocking images of people who've been involved in accidents. Look, the thing is that, in some places that would work, in others it won't. But I think, there's this, I wouldn't say an obsession with drunk driving in South Africa, but there's a focus on it. Whereas, there should be an equal focus on things such as distracted driving, where people use cell phones and iPads. I've driven on the highway and seen people use laptops while they're driving at speed. There's people who aren't buckling up themselves or their children, and therein lies a problem. Road safety in South Africa generally is a huge issue. We had 12,500 fatalities on our road last year. We are amongst the highest per capita road deaths in the world in South Africa. And certainly, I think we need to look at road safety as a whole. Does alcohol need to be a part of that? Absolutely it does. Does it need to be the sole focus of that? No. Education is extremely important, and we talk about education all the time, and it sounds cliched, but we have to start teaching children as young as 5 the rules of the road in schools. We have to then progress that to primary school and to high school. We need that education. That is absolutely vital. We do need, obviously, campaigns throughout the year about the dangers of intoxicated driving and walking, and distracted driving and walking. We need all of that stuff as well. And there is a huge role that the public needs to play in making our roads safer. But at the same time, law enforcement needs to get more resourced. It needs to be beefed up, and it needs to operate on a 24/7 basis more than what it's doing at the moment.
And now let's look at the situation we're in now with lockdown level 2. There's a curfew for 10 o'clock in the evening. Do you think this will play a role in keeping the number down when it comes to drunk driving, when it comes to alcohol sales as well, considering that they'll stop selling it at 10 o'clock, or you can stop sitting at a bar having a drink at 10 o'clock. Do you think that will play a role?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, and I'll tell you why it's tough, because I wouldn't want to speculate and say, yes, it's definitely going to have an impact. I think, we've seen the evidence in the previous lockdowns and when the previous alcohol restrictions were in place, that drunk driving obviously decreased. We saw that, incidents where intoxicated pedestrians were involved obviously decreased. So I think, when you take alcohol out of the mix, then it stands to reason, logically, that the number of incidents you're going to have, either of people walking intoxicated or driving intoxicated, are going to reduce. You ask whether it's going to have an impact. I think it's a loaded question in the sense of, I think you're asking whether I approve of it or not, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. If there is a lack of alcohol available and people don't drink, and because people don't drink, they don't drive, then, I think obviously it's going to have an impact on the numbers of people involved in accidents related to alcohol.
When it comes to organizations like the AA, what is the AA's role in making sure that people are aware of the dangers of driving under the influence of alcohol?
Look, I think we run year-round campaigns where we don't focus, as I said earlier, just on alcohol and intoxicated drivers. We focus on road safety generally. Our message is always obey the rules of the road. Our message is always, drive correctly when you are behind the wheel of a car. We not only focused on drivers, we also focused on pedestrians, on road users. We help make pedestrians more visible through various campaigns. We're looking at educating children, as I said earlier, through various of our projects that run at schools. We are very much focused on looking at road safety as a whole, Jacob, and obviously drunk driving and intoxicated walking are going to form a part of that. But I think we cannot isolate this one thing and say this is the biggest problem we have in South Africa, because it's not the biggest problem we have. We need to, in terms of our roads, we need to look at road safety as a whole. And we need to look at how we can improve road safety for all road users, not just looking at motorists and intoxicated driving. We need to look at road safety as a whole. And that is what the AA is focused on. That's what we look at through all of our messaging, through all of our advocacy, through our projects and through our campaigns. We look at making roads safer for all road users.
Layton, before I let you go, I just want to quote something from this report, and I know that you're not quite familiar with the report itself, but there is a statement that stood out for me, and it says, driver intoxication played a significantly greater role in fatal crashes occurring at night, during weekends, and during non-vacation periods of the year. This effect is consistent and robust despite the type of vehicle, type of crash, and fatality outcomes. Do you perhaps have a comment on that?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think the only thing that I'd like to question with that, and I'm not questioning the findings at all. I haven't seen them, and based on what you've told me, that makes perfect sense. When you talk about over weekends and at night, these are the times we know that people drink and drive. And, from previous RTMC reports, we know that there are specific times, and they normally fall overnight, and over weekends in which people are involved in crashes. I think what I would like to know is what percentage of those people are pedestrians, and how pedestrians are factored in terms of people who are involved in crashes involving intoxicated drivers or intoxicated walkers. Because if you're an intoxicated walker, you're as dangerous in terms of a road crash as an intoxicated driver.
All right, Layton Beard, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. He is the spokesperson for the Automobile Association.